Hello, and welcome to Binge Watch. We're back again because, of course, Netflix and Marvel has released The Punisher. So that is a show that I've been interested about since first heard about it. I remember the old Punisher movie that came out. Not the original. I haven't seen that one, but the new one with what's his face, Patrick Jane. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I didn't see the one after it. Um, but I did see that one. And the Punisher's always been an interesting character, in a way, kind of like the Batman, because he doesn't really have superpowers. He just has a very unique set of skills. They should have got Liam Neeson to play him, thinking of that. But anyways, this is Binge Watch. This is my show where I binge watch an entire season of something uh, and give you my immediate visceral reactions to it after every episode. So we're going to jump right in and get to the good stuff and see what Frank Castle has in store for us today. I'm looking forward to it. So let's get right to it, and I'll see you in a few. All right, so that's the first episode down, 3 a.m. And right off the bat, I was impressed. Uh, Not only because of the opening and how it has a very bluesy feel to it, the music and the opening animation and whatnot, and a little bit at the beginning with Frank Castle before the opening even plays. I don't know if that's going to be included in everything, but I doubt it. But there's a little bit where he's playing a guitar with one of his children, and it keeps cutting back and forth between him playing the guitar with his child there and him playing the guitar alone. And this whole thing, the way it's all set up, is really, it's hammering home that bluesy feel, that noir feel of the story that I found was rather prevalent in the first Daredevil season, and that is back again with this one. I quite enjoy it so far. Definitely some cool things happening here in this one. You see Frank kind of living under an assumed name back in New York. He kind of sort of makes friends with a young kid uh, who starts work at the construction site where he's at. Um, and of course, said kid gets into trouble with some of the other construction guys. There's a robbery that goes awry, and Frank has to beat up and kill these other construction guys to save him, as well as the guys that'll be looking for him. Definitely interesting so far. I like the way it's being all laid out. There's also don't know if she's FBI or not, but there's a Dinah Madani who is trying to, she's back in the States, I guess, and trying to investigate the whole army heroin and whatnot that uh, Castle was a part of this unit and it was connected to and his superior officer. So there's going to be some interesting things happening there. She is a very interesting character. Uh, there is a bit right at the beginning. It's a very small touch, but I like what they did where you see her driving an amazing muscle car. Oh, I love the look of it, everything about it. Uh, Into the office, and she goes to get out of the car, and you see she's wearing like a pantsuit, a suit type deal, not skirts, suit, and it's very nice and tasteful. But as she gets out of the car, she's wearing Converse sneakers. But then she takes out a pair of boots, high heel boots, and sits there half in her car with her feet out, changing her shoes. They don't show the whole changing of the shoes, but you get enough just to know that she's gotten to work and she's changing into the high heeled shoes or the boots while with like the thick wedges and whatnot. But driving into work, she was wearing sneakers, Converse sneakers. That says a lot about her as a character. So I'm interested. And there seems to be some guy, maybe a hacker, that knows who Frank is. right at the end of the episode. So we're going to be moving on to the next episode, and I'll see you in a few. And yeah, we'll look at that. Be right back. All right, episode 2, Two Dead Men. Uh, Down. And things are getting very, very interesting. I didn't mention it in the last bit I was talking about episode 1, but Dinah Madani's boss is, I think it was something Wolf, Carson Wolf maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but it's Sam Rockwell. It's played by Sam Rockwell, which I thought was really cool. Uh, and then in this episode, the second one, uh, he's kicking around more. Frank ends up basically getting some information out of him and then killing him. And I'm like, oh man, he's dead. But just the fact that Sam Rockwell is in it for such a short period of time uh, is really quite cool. Dinah Madani is currently trying to find out some information from one of Frank Castle's old buddies. There may be some sexual tension going on there. I like this. I like Dinah Madani's character. Um, Everything about her is amazing so far. And then there's Frank and Micro, the hacker guy that we saw at the end of the first episode. He shows up here calling up Frank on a payphone and kind of being all CIA spooktastic about it. But then Castle ends up tracking him down. We also see what's her name? Karen from Daredevil. She's in this helping Frank out a little bit. I don't know if she's going to be in it much more, but the fact that she's in it is just really cool. She's the one that helps him find Micro, David Lieberman, and Frank. Frank leads him on a bit of a merry chase, uh, and then gets into his sanctum and punches him out at the end of this episode. I don't know where things are going from there, but it definitely is interesting. I'm loving the feel of this, the tone of this show. It has that uh, kind of CIA spy story mixed with a noir detective story in a way, almost kind of like Sin City, in the way that it's like brutal and rough, and nobody really seems to be good. So I don't know. Uh, I'm also kind of concerned about um, Sam Stein, uh, Dinah Madani's partner. I don't know what to think about him. Something about him seems off, but I don't know if that's just his personality or not. So we shall see. But we're going to be moving on to the next episode, and I'll see you in a few. All right, episode 3, Kandahar, is in the bag, and this is getting. I like what they're doing storytelling wise. It's slow to start. Things are just slowly kicking off. We've got a fair bit of flashbacks in this episode to Frank's time back in the war and whatnot, and his involvement with his former commanding officer that he ended up killing in Daredevil season 2, and stuff like that. Um, but there's also some flashbacks to Micro, Mr. David Lieberman there, and how he was basically railroaded and ended up being able to fake his own death. But one of the things I find most interesting about the way this is kicking off, the way this is all building up, is that there's a lot of bits and pieces here and there dealing with the guy from Anvil, um, dealing with some of the people in the support group, his friend in the support group, and Frank Castle himself, revolving all around their experiences in the war over in Afghanistan and how it's affected them, how it's changed them, and the physical and emotional state of veterans in general, um, and how the government, there's a bit of an undertone about how the government isn't really stepping up to help these people, and it's fascinating in terms of storytelling and whatnot. I mean, this is a bit of a hot button topic. It has been down in the States for a while now, and that this popular television show, uh, because it's all connected to the Marvel and the cinematic universe, is highlighting this and choosing to highlight this. This isn't something they needed to do to tell the story. I don't think so. Um, but the fact that they are is amazing. Um, there's one character. So far, he's only seems to be an incidental character. I don't know if he's going to be bigger later on. Named Lewis, who was in the support group and whatnot. And we see his father coming home. He's having a bad dream, and his son ends up, the guy Lewis ends up pulling a gun and shooting through a window like about a foot from his father, and it doesn't hit his father, but there's that moment of horror and realization, and his father is trying to comfort him, but he like pushes his father away and storms off, being all, "I could have killed you, I could have killed you." I mean, that that disconnect, that uh, the feelings that he's having there. I mean, this is not something that I have ever experienced or probably will ever experience. But the way it's portrayed here is very much very real, very visceral, and I like it. I like what they're doing here. That this is not only being used as a story element, as a story point, but also to highlight an issue that is actually happening. Kudos, kudos to you on this, Marvel. Uh, so that's it for this episode. We're going to go on to the next episode, Resupply, and I'll see you in a few. All right, so that's Resupply, and things are getting interesting. This was kind of an uncomfortable episode to watch, not because of, not exactly because of the material and the context of it, but simply because of the kind of drama that they're portraying here with some of this. You've got Lewis, who is basically, he's dug himself a foxhole in his backyard and is living in it because it's the only place he can sleep, and it's the middle of November. That young man is really going through some issues, uh, suffering through some stuff. Um, the friend of Frank's, the African American fellow who runs group, um, tried to talk to him. He ended up going to the other friend of Frank's who was with him back in Kandahar and who runs Anvil, a private security type contracting place. Lewis went to him and went to train for a job. Uh, the African American guy, Connor, I think his name is, if I remember correctly, or Conway. I can't quite remember. I'm a little fuzzed today in the head. As you can see, I haven't shaved either. But he goes to the fellow here who runs Anvil and has a word with him. And when the guy talks to him and basically says, we can't take you on because you're trouble waiting to happen, more or less. He doesn't use those exact words, but it gets tense. Lewis, the young man, he doesn't take it well. On top of that, you've got Castle dealing with David Lederman, Mr. Hacker guy, and also dealing with his wife because he ended up investigating what was going on there by pretending to get hit with her car. So he has to go back and sign the insurance papers and helps her fix her sink as well as fix her headlight. And you kind of get the impression that Mr. Lederman is thinking Frank might be trying to move in on his wife. There's a lot of family drama going on there. And oh, as I said, it's a little bit uncomfortable to watch, but not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. I can dig episodes like this. Um, as long as the whole show isn't like this, it's more or less interesting. And then there's a whole gun running operation that Agent Madani and her partner is working to working to get that Frank and David end up hijacking. Except David gets his hands dirty and runs Madani's car off the road. Well, runs into it, T-bones it, sends it flying, and bangs her up pretty nicely as well. But Madani sees Castle, and they have a little talk before he leaves her. So things are getting interesting. It's a very brutal series so far, more so than the other ones. The other ones were kind of gritty and brutal in their own ways, but this one I would put kind of on a level as Jessica Jones in terms of what they're talking about and how serious these topics are. Really, really interesting. I'm liking what they're doing so far. They're not candy coating stuff in this, so beautiful. So we're gonna move on to the next episode, Gunner, and I will see you in a few. All right, we're back, and Gunner was an interesting episode. Um, things are getting very interesting. Uh, we get to see Paige and Dinah Madani uh, have a little chat. Um, Paige and Frank seem to be having quite a bit of a good chemistry going on. There is also more of that stuff going on with Frank and David's wife, and the daughter, David's daughter, seems to really like Frank, or Pete as they know him. The son, however, uh, doesn't. I get the feeling that the son is very much like the father in the fact that they probably both think that Frank is trying to put the moves on David's wife, even though I don't think Frank is doing that. Frank is just being a nice guy. So that's going on there. Um, there is a bit of a investigation going on. Sam Stein, Madani's partner, actually lied for her to the inspector general. So I don't know what's going on there. They're looking into Frank's old unit because she told Stein that Frank Castle is the one that pulled her out of the wreckage. Mm-hmm. So that's all going on, and we get to see Agent Orange, the big bad guy that seems to possibly have started all this. He's getting a bigger promotion, and he now knows that Frank is kicking around because Frank went to meet Gunnar Henderson, the one of the guys from his old unit, out in the middle of the woods, and the Agent Orange sent a team in to get rid of Gunnar. They killed all the team. Gunnar ended up dying anyways, but not before Gunnar passed on some information to Frank. And in those video feeds from that team, Agent Orange saw Frank Castle's face. And things are getting interesting there. I don't know what's going to happen next, but everything about this show is very visceral, very real, and realistic. Even though this is like a Marvel superhero type thing, it's very realistic, and I'm really liking it so far. Uh, Also, Madani and Billy. Billy's the guy's name that runs Anvil. Um, they kind of hooked up for some nookie, so that's interesting. Um, Despite the fact that she's hurt, Madani is a very interesting character. I, I actually did a little checking. She's not. in the comic books at all. This is a brand new character that Marvel created for this show, and I really like her. Um, she is very strong, strong-willed, um, strong female character, and despite all that, she's still female. It's not like she's been coded male or anything. No, no, she's definitely uh, a strong female character in the same way that Wonder Woman, Diana, was a strong female character, and I really like it. I'm like really behind her. So I hope she turns out interesting in the long run over this whole thing. So we're going to jump on to the next episode. I will see you in a few. Okay, so the Judas Goat, episode 6, is down, and oh, all right. A lot of things happened in this episode. There are a lot of dead bodies on the ground from last episode. Um, Madani and Sam have got actual evidence that Frank Castle is alive. From this, she reaches out to Billy, the head of Anvil, asks him to help her bring him in or make contact. And Billy tries to do this to help Frank. Um, Curtis, or I think it's Curtis. Yeah, Curtis. That's the guy's name. Um, the African American fellow who lost his leg in the war, runs the group, and whatnot. Uh, he helps. Uh, he helps David patch up Frank and get him back up and running. Frank has Frank and David had a bit of a heart-to-heart talk, I guess. They seem to be forming a bond, being friends even. And Frank ends up talking to David's wife and seems to uh, tell her that, and David at the same time, because David's watching through the cameras. But the way he says is that things are going to be looking better for the Lieberman family. So I think he's planning on getting David back together with his family soon. I think Frank's made a decision. Uh, things things seem to be bouncing back and forth a bit, and then right at the end of the episode, we see that Billy is waiting at the docks to because he promised Frank he'd get him on a boat, get him out of the city, and it looked like Frank might be wanting to take him up on that offer. Only he doesn't seem to be coming, and Billy gets in the car and says to someone he's not coming, and that someone that we see that he's talking to is Agent Orange. Billy's a traitor. Billy's a traitor. Oh, oh, I, that hit me hard. I was like, you son of a bitch. Oh, so good, so wonderful. And Lewis ends up getting arrested for a bit, and then confronts the larger fellow who was always talking stuff at group, getting all irate and everything. Finds out that his stories were all a lie from Curtis, and he confronts him. And Lewis and him get in a bit of an argument and fight, and Lewis kills him. I mean, the way that it's portraying uh, veterans and those people that have been in the war and whatnot, any war, um, the way it's portraying all the different myriad ways that these people react to this stuff is amazing. I mean, simply amazing. I mean, Lewis is a bit of a ticking time bomb waiting to happen, but you've got Curtis, pardon me, seems to be doing well. Frank, however, he's keeping it together, but he's not the same sort of a man he once was. Uh, I mean, it's very visceral, very real, um, very brutal in a way, but I like it. I like it quite a bit. So that's going to be it for this little bit. We're going to be moving on to the next episode, and I will see you in a few. All right, episode 7, Crosshairs. Things are developing. We've got uh, Frank and David uh, tracking down one of the members of the conspiracy, um, Bennett, Colonel Bennett, who used to run the morgue uh, back over in Kandahar, and they lay a bit of a trap uh, because they know that if they go there, there's going to be a trap. So there's some slight misdirection and whatnot, and it gets to the point towards the end where good old Agent Orange, uh, who's kicking around, uh, his location's discovered by Frank, who shows up with a nice 50 cal to put a bullet through his head. The way this episode ends is pretty cool because he's got him right in his sights. Even shoots the bullet. And the glass that he's shooting through is bulletproof. It spiderwebs, but doesn't break through and kill him. And of course, as soon as that happens, the lights all come up, the alarms go off on this safe house, and Frank gets the heck out of Dodge. But what a moment that was. You're like thinking, he's going to do it. He's going to finally end this. But we're only halfway through. So what's going to happen? Oh. And there was a wonderful bit with Billy Russo and Agent Orange about him being afraid that Frank is going to kill him. And you see a little bit of that fear in this one. Lewis has killed a man, which I believe I mentioned last episode, or last little segment I did here. And I don't know, it looks like he's building a bomb in this one. There's something's going on with that man, and he needs some help. He needs some serious help. What else is there? Oh yes, Agent Madani and Sam find a bug in her office. They know that somebody's been listening, but they don't yet know what to do with it. There's a wonderful moment with Madani where they don't have they don't do it with dialogue at all, which I amazingly love. She's just in her office looking at pictures of Gunnar Henderson, who's dead, thinking to herself. And you can see she's like puzzled as to how he ends up dead so soon after they find out about him. But she doesn't say anything. She's not talking to herself. It's all done via facial expression. And you just get this beautiful scene where she's looking puzzled and thinking to herself. And then she goes and has this moment of it's like, oh my God, I think my office is bugged. And she doesn't say it. Again, there's no dialogue in this little scene. But it's so beautiful. I am got a huge crush on Agent Madani right now because she is amazing. I'm loving everything about her. And Sam, I'm more inclined to trust Sam right now because he definitely seems to be the trustworthy type. But again, I don't know. So it's interesting. There's some good stuff going on here. Good drama and whatnot. So we're going to go on to the next episode, Cold Steel, and have a look at that. I'll see you in a few. All right, episode 8, Cold Steel. Well, things are interesting. The entire drama that's going on with David's wife, Sarah, and David himself not being able to see her or any of his family, and Frank being around, it kind of comes to a head. There's a bit of a kiss that happens because Frank had to go over to check why the cameras all went out. And David sees this gets drunk. He doesn't seem to be holding it against Frank exactly, which is interesting. I thought he would. I thought he'd be all accusing him of trying to steal his wife. There's a little bit of that, but there doesn't seem to be any heat behind that, which is really interesting. Like he can't blame Frank, he says, because his wife is beautiful, and he doesn't blame his wife because she's been alone for like over a year since he's been dead. Things are interesting there. Um, Dinah and Sam set up a decoy operation to lure in the people that are trying to capture Frank. And that goes a little bit badly. Uh, and also, Sarah and David's son, um, she finds a knife, and he's been a bit of a bully, stealing. He smacked his sister at one point, and it seems Frank kind of gets through to him, scares the piss out of the poor kid. Uh, but that seems to be what it took. He seems to be, a little better after that. And David really wants to get back to his family. He is breaking apart. That poor man. But the operation that they did, Sam ends up getting killed by uh, by Billy, because Billy was running it. He's the only one that survived, and he kills Sam. And right at the end of the episode, you see Madani a little bit out of it, a little bit staring off into space as she's in the tub trying to not exactly clean herself, but she looks out of it. And yeah, Billy's there helping her get clean, being very caring, which is a very good parallel because this episode began with Billy visiting his mother in the hospital. And the man is a sociopath. The man is a sociopath, absolutely. And it's been a wonderful progression for him because he's been, like, when you first see him, he seems like a nice guy. And now the man's cold. Cold steel, you might say. So, wow. Fascinating episode. Looking forward to the next one. So we're going to go and check that out right now. I'll see you in a few. All right. So the beginning of this episode has Madani in bed, kind of grieving over the death of Sam Stein. Frank and David are watching her, and while they're watching her, a bomb goes off. We find out it's more than one. It's 3 bombs because Lewis has decided to take matters into his own hands and become a bomber to I guess fight back against the government and whatnot. He has gone completely off the rails. And Karen, he actually writes a letter to Karen, Lewis does. And Karen is all pissed off about it. Even goes on the radio and calls him a coward. So now she's in the sights of this bomber. Curtis ends up finding out that Lewis is doing nasty stuff and has killed O'Connor, the big guy that Lewis ended up stabbing. Oh, this show is an unflinching look at things, and I'm impressed at how things are going so far. To the point that the Punisher, good old Frank, ends up going up against Lewis a little bit. They don't fight, but it's just talking on the phone because Lewis has Curtis strapped up to a chair with a claymore mine and some C4 on him. And Frank manages to get through to him a little in the discussion over the course of the episode so that he can cut the wire and save Curtis. from getting blown up. But in the process, the police are like right there when he escapes, and they capture his image on a dashboard cam. Madani finally leaves to go and speak at Sam's funeral. She's planning on basically announcing everything at the funeral and throwing herself under the bus, basically. But on the way, she stops for a drink at a bar, and David shows up, introduces himself as Micro, and starts telling her some of the stuff that's been going on. And while they're there, the news comes on, and we see that dashboard cam video of Frank. The Punisher is back. And that's basically how the episode ends. It's heading into the end game now. I can feel things picking up. Next episode, Virtue of the Vicious. We're going to go check that out right now. I'll see you in a few. So that's episode 10 down. And this entire episode is rather interesting in how the format's laid out and whatnot, because it's all about the attack on Senator Ori, who showed up by Lewis. He decides to show up, and you've got Lewis, Senator Ori, you've got Billy, you've got Dinah Madani, you got Karen and Frank, all in the same area. And I believe there's also a detective from Daredevil that was investigating the Punisher case, which is kind of cool. And it's all about different people's stories. You've got Billy's story, Dinah's story, Karen's, and the Senator's as to what happened. And it all kind of plays out in a slightly disjointed manner. You see things from different people's perspectives throughout the entire episode. And it's rather cool what develops because, yeah, Frank gets away, of course. People are thinking maybe Lewis and Frank are working together. Billy, however, his story and his persona seems to be becoming a little undone. Just a tad, because Madani pegs onto him during this whole thing because he tries to shoot Castle, and she kind of gets the impression or figures out in her head that he's the one who killed Stein, because the other four guys she found out all used to work for Anvil. She questioned him about it, and then this shootout happens, and she's all, you did it, you killed Stein. And I have a feeling she's going to be going gunning for him next. Things are building up. Things are building up for an end game now. Madani also has a little bit of confrontation with Frank. Lewis is gone. He blew himself up in this episode. I mean, the way it all played out is very real, very visceral, as I've said before. And the way they have it showing him going off the rails over these few episodes, amazing storytelling for the sorts of problems and issues that some veterans have to deal with. Just phenomenal storytelling all around. So we're going to move on to the 11th episode, Danger Close, and I'll see you in a few. Okay, so episode 11. What was that called again? Oh no, I can't remember. I can't remember what it was called. That's all right. Episode 11 is now, and yeah, things take a very dark turn. Sarah and Zach are kidnapped. The little girl Leo managed to get away, and Frank decides that he's going to take some names, basically. So he sends David out to meet up with his daughter. That is a very touching moment, especially when Frank's telling him he's got to go and do this. And he's like, how do I do that? How do I just walk up to her? I mean, he's been away from his family for over a year now, watching them through cameras. He's got this distance built up between them, and he's like, I don't know how to bridge that. And so when they finally do meet, it is very touching. We've also got Madani doing some questioning of both Russo and the head of the CIA. Oh, that a friend of hers who's high up in the government, Rafi, he's been in a few episodes. He starts talking. Uh, Things are coming to a head, and uh, there's a wonderful firefight with the Punisher in the little base that they have. They do some really cool stuff there, uh, as well as some some nice little talking going on between Billy and Frank. And right at the end of the episode, we find out that Frank called Madani, and Madani's there to help them. So I don't know what's coming up next. And immediately after that, you see Billy in the base where Frank had the firefight. The computer's all set up to, I guess, broadcast this video of torture and all the information they have. And he just is looking at this going, shit. So things are starting to crumble for the bad guys. And there's going to be probably a nice epic firefight pretty soon. Looking forward to that. Going to be going on to the next episode, episode 12, Home, and we will see what happens. So I'll see you in a few. Alrighty. Episode 12, Home, is now done. And that was, I think, basically the climax, in a way. I believe the last episode is going to be kind of a denouement, in a way. Um, but, wow. There was a bit of an exchange of prisoners. Frank and David exchanged themselves for David's wife Sarah and son Zach. And Billy was there to make sure things went okay, but there was a little bit of a difficulty, and David got shot in the back by Homeland. He went down. They only managed to take Frank. So, very interesting there, except, of course, David's not dead. That was all of a bit of a setup. Frank is then alone with the bad guys, getting just the ever-loving tar beat out of him by Agent Orange, Mr. Rollins there. And the computers are all set up. It's a bit of an extended torture scene. You get to see David reuniting with his family. That was a bit of a tearjerker, I don't mind telling you. Such glorious drama in this. It's not even high drama. It's just good meaty drama that you can sink your teeth into, and I love it. But of course, this was all the big setup. Frank wanted them there, wanted them in this basement because of all the cameras set up earlier. That David said that if he doesn't use his little thing there, it would start transmitting all this information out. Except when Frank goes and puts in the password and whatnot to let them into the computer, the cameras turn on, start recording everything that's going on. Him getting tortured by Agent Orange and Billy Russo and the bad guys there, and they don't realize this. Although Billy does have a bit of a redemption because he lets Frank get free so he could kill Agent Orange. And then he's going to kill Frank, but David has gotten Homeland Security in and Miss Madani. And it seems like Frank might be dying but he comes back right at the end, and the credits kind of roll there, and we've only got one episode left. I don't know what's going to happen, but things are nice. I'm I'm liking everything that this is very gritty, very noir. Not gritty like the DCEU gritty or Nolan's Batman gritty. Not that type of gritty, but it's got that realistic grittiness that it's like this is like real people. Uh, so I like it. I'm really a huge fan of everything that's been going on in this. Um, I don't know how things are going to pan out with the last episode, but I'm going to go watch that in a minute, and I will give my final thoughts on the series as a whole. So I will see you all in a few. Okay, that is the last episode, Memento Mori. Uh, it's kind of a denouement, as I said, um, but there's still a climax to it. It's all about Billy Russo escaping and him and Frank having their showdown, uh, as well as the whole thing with Dinah or Dina Madani going after and helping Frank take Billy down. And I'm not gonna. Well, no, I've been spoiling things. Uh, that's kind of what the show does. Um, but the showdown's pretty good. It's a nice brutal battle between these two. There's a couple of innocent hostages. Dinah shows up, tries help, ends up getting shot in the head. And she survives. And she survives. What a badass woman. I really like her character. Um, David and his family are fully reunited together once again. Things are quite happy and nice there. And Billy Russo is not, in fact, killed. But Frank beats the tar out of him and messes up his pretty face quite a bit. Oh my God! Some of the 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 best thing that I like about this show, like I've mentioned, it's visceral, it's real, realistic, brutal, gritty, and all this and that. Has the dark noir type feel to it, as well as this just this gritty undertone. The opening intro that they have is all in black and white. And I think that was intentional because the entire show it deals with issues that aren't black and white a lot of the time. There's definitely a lot of black and white issues in here, but a lot of shades of gray. Like with, oh, pardon me. Oh, it's been a long day. um, but the Punisher and his brand of vigilantism and whatnot. This is a shade of gray because he's going after evil men. Is it okay? So I think that was intentional on their part. And there's a lot of that sort of philosophy at play throughout this entire movie. Is it is it right what he's doing? Should we be rooting for him? Um, Even though he's more or less the good guy in this. So I really, really enjoyed this. This is definitely going above uh, Iron Fist in terms of the Marvel Netflix, even though it's not really connected to the whole Defenders thing. Um, Definitely going above that. Um, I'd even put it up there with Jessica Jones and Daredevil season one. Uh, in terms of how I feel about it, it was an amazing show. Lots of brutal moments, made me cry a few times with some of the reunions and whatnot. So yeah, I what can I say? It is a fantastic show, well written, and I loved pretty much everything about it. The characterizations, it's all really good, and the messages that it's trying to portray, I should say, is amazing. Simply amazing how they've done this. So kudos to you, Marvel and Netflix. You've done a good job. And that's going to be it for this episode of the Binge Watch. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think of The Punisher? What do you think of the shades of gray and the philosophical meanings and messages going on? Please, let's get a discussion going on this, because I would love to talk to some people about it. So do all that, and until next time, you all keep binge watching, and I'll see you around.